Hi everyone and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. Today I'm really excited to be joined by Suzy K Quinn, who's one of the most prolific writers in the self-publishing world. Now it's fascinating to speak to her today all about romantic comedy, how she writes her books, her writing process, what she does for marketing her books. Now this is all going to be really, really valuable to you because she's one of the biggest writers in the self-publishing world. So it was really exciting to have her on the show. And I think you're going to learn a lot of tips, a lot of tricks, a bit about romantic comedy, a bit about writing processes, a bit about marketing. And even if you're doing fiction or non-fiction, Suzy K Quinn is one of the best people to learn all about that from, as she's one of the most successful. So I think you're going to find it really interesting. Check out her books in the show notes as well afterwards, and we will put a link to those. And I hope you enjoy the show. Hi everyone and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. I'm here with Suzy Quinn, who's the writer of over 20 books in the romance, comedy romance and the thriller categories. And she's also the founder of the How to Write a Bestseller course. Thanks for joining us, Suzy K Quinn.
Very welcome. Nice to be here, Teddy.
Thank you. So thanks for joining the show. So I just thought I'd like you to tell us a bit about your background and how you got started as a writer.
Sure. So I think like most writers, I was writing from a really young age. So I started writing when I was about 5 or 6 in terms of writing stories. I think it's probably true of most writers that you realise that you love writing stories really young. And then when I was about, I think 8 or 9, I found my dad had a word processing computer, if you can imagine such a thing, that I could write on, and I was a really slow typer, but I'd write out my stories, which my dad then read, which I was really annoyed about. But yeah, so, and then, I always loved whenever there was a story that you had to write in English or something like that. I absolutely loved it. And I love reading, and English came very easily to me, lucky me. And then, yeah, I went traveling when I was in my sort of early 20s, and it sort of just hit me one day. Okay, so I think I want to write novels. And it was a really upsetting realization because it's such a, competitive career looked at through a certain lens. It can feel competitive. And also there's no kind of standard inroads. So if you decide you want to be a doctor or something like that, maybe it's difficult, maybe it's 5 years and you're not too sure how you're going to fund it and all the rest of it, but at least at the end of it you will work as a doctor, whereas with writing it's not like that. So it was a difficult realization. I could have done with going for something a bit easier.
There's a lot of crap advice out there, isn't there? Like, just keep writing and see what happens. It's like, you've got to practice.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's, I know what you mean about that advice, but it does have a truth to it, in that you just have to, the more you write, the better you get. And sometimes you're not having the success because you're not as good as you were supposed to be yet, and so you've just got to keep writing the next book. Every book gets better and better.
Yeah, brilliant. So when you were traveling, was there a particular book you think you read which was like your spark moment that wanted to get you into writing?
I don't think it was about, I was sort of trying to work out, okay, what am I going to do for the world? What's my job here? How can I be of service to people? Yeah. And I suppose I just worked out, it was that sort of combination of creativity and language that was just what I just really enjoyed doing. And the things you enjoy are obviously the things that you'll usually end up being best at, But what I did do when I decided I was going to be a writer was I did read lots of books, lots and lots of all sorts of books, and then lots of books on writing. And one of those was Stephen King's book on writing, which is really fun and brilliant. And I love his trajectory into writing. He's got a really interesting story about how he was, had some horrible dead-end job, and then he just got this mega advance, and it was wonderful.
Yeah, brilliant. And so with your genres, you mostly in romantic comedy and thrillers, but were these books you enjoyed reading, or was it, like, how did you settle on that category that you wanted to write about?
I think I read all sorts of different genres. In fact, I would say I'm probably not a genre person as much as a sort of book club person, if you know what I mean. So I like sort of big vision books, ones that have really big stories. I don't necessarily read in a certain genre, but what leads me to write a certain book will be the story that comes to me. And unfortunately for me, it always seems to come in different genres rather than the same genre. It would be useful if it was the same genre all the time.
It works for a lot of writers, doesn't it? Like J.K. Rowling's got her books that are in like, the crime books with the strike, and also the Harry Potter fantasy books. They're completely different, really.
Yeah, exactly. True. Yeah, that's true.
So when you're approaching your writing, like you've got your best-selling series, The Bad Mother's Diary. How do you approach writing those? Do you have a particular methodology to your writing?
It seems to change with every type of story I write, because the methodology for writing a thriller is really different from writing, say, a romantic comedy, or generally it is, because it's a different way in. So with the Bad Mother series, it started off as a sort of character piece. I just started writing this kind of funny, or what I thought was funny, stuff about a mom who's having problems, and it just sort of, all the other characters just kind of came in and developed, and then various sort of drama pieces just sort of came out of it. And it was written in a diary style, but it didn't start out as a diary, so it sort of evolved, that one.
Yeah.
And then the Ivy Lessons, that was another book that just evolved from an idea. So that was a romance between a teacher and a student, and that just kind of evolved from that idea of what would that look like. And I guess they'd have to be, it has to be a university teacher, obviously, and she has to be a university student, and what would the university be like, and all that kind of stuff. But then with thrillers, I tend to know the ending, so I plan it a bit more. So, and that's harder because the characters, it's never a good idea to bend the character into a story, just to make the plot work. But it's really hard with thrillers because obviously you do have certain things that you want to happen.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of, it's like a big Rubik's Cube, it's really hard to get that puzzle sometimes in the middle. It looks simple at the beginning, and then you start sort of twisting it around, and in the middle you're kind of, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to make this neat and tidy, but you get there in the end.
I was chatting to James Blatch a week or so ago, and he was talking about a book he read called Save the Cat. And it's a book about, and that basically talks about those things you were just saying about when you're plotting it, especially with thrillers, there's kind of points you need to make within the book. Was that like a structure you followed, do you think, or did you have your own way of working it?
So I think it's Save the Cat is more for screenwriters, and it's sort of, but it is a great book. I mean, it's really good. And I really am behind kind of like being aware of certain plot points in your story, and also novelists working more like screenwriters, because screenwriters often make great novelists and have loads of success. So I would say that I have a sort of pared down, is it pared down, pared down? I never remember that word.
Pared down, I think.
Yeah, so I have a sort of a more kind of 6 kind of part structure that I sort of follow, kind of, and it just keeps it simpler like that. And then you can move scenes around, and but I do Save the Cat is a great book.
Yeah, brilliant. All your books they're published under traditional authors. Have you ever thought about considering going down the self-publishing versus publishing route, or why you've made a particular decision on that?
So lots of my books are self-published. So my Mother's Diary series, they were all bestsellers. They were 100,000 copies plus, and they were self-published. And my Ivy Lessons series, that was self-published. That sold over 500,000. And my traditionally published books are all thrillers, basically. So the Teacher and Not My Daughter and Last Geishas, which is the first book I wrote. Yeah.
Was there a reason why you picked like self-publishing or publishing for either of them, or was it just how it fell in place?
With the Ivy Lessons, my publisher wouldn't take, well, they were going to take it, and then they weren't, and then they were, and I felt really sort of disrespected by the process, and it felt quite sort of, I'm sure they didn't mean it like this, and I think probably people in publishing are actually really nice people, but I think what they don't realise, that being on the other end of it as an author, is it's a huge power imbalance, and actually what you're doing is you're holding someone's career in a 5 seconds decision on, oh, should we do this, should we not, and publishers have to kind of make, they do have to make difficult decisions, and they have to cut authors loose if they're not selling. But I don't think they really understand. And sometimes publishers can be really loyal and they can be great. I mean, I've definitely heard that. But I think, sometimes I don't think they quite understand the courage it takes on the other end to be an author and what it means not to move forward with a book, So I just felt quite incensed by it. So I self-published it, and I really didn't expect it to be successful.
Right. Okay.
And it went on and was really successful, and I really didn't advertise it or anything. It just sort of happened.
Really?
So it's great. James, I hope James will call me a friend. I will call him a friend.
He wasn't talking badly about you, don't worry.
No, it's okay. But I think James and all those guys at the self-publishing formula, which I know is evolving at the moment into something really new and exciting, they've been great friends along the journey, and it's such a nice community to be part of the self-publishing community. Yeah,
it is. All the people I speak to in these sessions, I do a lot of coaching sessions with aspiring authors and things, and they're always great. When you self-publish the books, did you self-publish them through Amazon, or did you use a different way of marketing them?
I self-publish them through Amazon. Yeah.
So all do uploading and everything yourself.
Yeah. So it's not difficult.
No, I know. But what I mean is like, so you did all the the publishing and the marketing yourself. Like, so what marketing did you do for your own books, like compared to what you did as a for the published books?
For the published book. So for you're going to be surprised by this answer, but for the published book, so my published book was the first novel I ever wrote, actually, and have published. And I created a website, I created a Facebook page, I did 2 book launches and did loads and loads of PR about it. I made YouTube videos, I made lots of searchable things, and yes, lots of sort of web content that was searchable. So lots of photographs, stuff like that, that was all related to the book. And for my and that book sold about 10,000 copies, probably more by now. And then for my self-publishing, I didn't do any marketing whatsoever. I didn't write the book in my own name. I didn't do any Facebook pages. I didn't advertise, absolutely nothing at all. I just put it on Amazon and it sold.
Literally just put it up and it just started moving.
Yeah, the first month I came back and it had sold about 50 copies, and I was really surprised and delighted and didn't really expect much more to happen. I thought, oh well, it's going to sell 50 copies a month. That's great. That's a nice £50. And then the next month it was like, thousands, and then it was 10,000s, and wow. It just went up like that within 3-4 months.
Yeah. And have you done any marketing since that's gone, like, exploded?
So for that series, no, I didn't. I really didn't do anything. Yeah. Maybe I did do some adverts, really, but not really. It was many years after that I sort of got around to doing any advertising for it. And that was pretty much after the series had kind of peaked, really. So, yeah, I think I do see indie authors be really successful with marketing, so with advertising.
Yes, because that's what I want to talk about next. So, because obviously you've got your course, which is about how to write the bestseller. Now, I guess that is mostly about the actual writing of the book. It doesn't touch too much on the marketing, but could you tell us a bit more about like that course and what it includes?
Well, so my theory is that if you write a really good book and you get it right, the marketing, although these days, you have to market more, and because there's a lot more competition on Amazon KDP now, like good competition.
Yeah.
So I do think it looks like you do have to market and advertise and stuff now. But, if you get the right book and you hit the right fan base and you get the book right, that's like 80% of the work. And so that's basically what the course is about. So the course is about creating a book that engages readers and is effective in doing what readers are expecting.
So for your current website now, like, do you have any marketing tactics which you use, such as like newsletters or anything that's actually been successful?
It's very hard to measure, I would say. I do. I have a website, I have a newsletter, stuff like that. I can't honestly say that it leads to book sales. I've never really noticed that very much. For me, it's all about just writing the right book. Yeah. And, and then finding the readers is easier, Yeah, I don't know about newsletters, really. I know some people are really behind them, but it doesn't seem... I don't know. I'm not that sold on them, is what I would say about newsletters.
Fine.
But I do one. Because...
Yeah, they're quite good for speaking a bit more to your original audience, I think. A lot of the books I write, the newsletters, most of my books are about non-fiction, so the newsletters are a bit easier to write, but it's a lot easier for me to speak to my audience about some of the things like that within the book. So maybe you can go a bit deeper into a particular topic, or you can talk about some other things you've written that I found interesting. It's actually...
Does it lead to book sales, though?
It can lead to book sales, but also it can be a kind of income generator in itself. If you've got an audience of people that really like your stuff, other people who might have either adjacent products or other books which are in a similar sort of niche might want to also speak to your audience, and sometimes they can pay for that sort of thing.
Right. Okay, that sounds interesting. But would that be more for non-fiction, would you say?
Well, I think probably mostly, but not necessarily only for non-fiction. I think, if people are interested in sort of romance books, for example, and you've got another author who you think might want to speak to your list, then maybe that could be something that someone who might want to advertise on your list, for example. I know some fiction authors who are doing just that.
I wouldn't imagine it would be a big revenue spinner, would be my guess. I don't know, but this is just my feeling on it. My list is, how much is my list now? 30,000, something like that. Yeah. And I'm not sure I would advertise. I'm not sure. It would have to be a very close match for, I'd celebrate my friends on it, I guess. But I don't know. Anyway.
So you talk a lot about the writing the good book, and especially in the writing the bestseller. So what are the things that people would learn from that course in order to get that bestseller written? Is there particular writing techniques they should follow, or is it like a particular structure that you recommend them following?
So there's sort of various things to it. A lot of it is about finding your readers and kind of really honing down on who your readers are and stuff like that. There are a few things in terms of, a lot of it centers around the idea itself as well. a lot of the advice. But then there is also advice about writing. It's quite simple advice, or it seems quite simple to follow anyway, that gets people turning pages. And a lot of my book sales come from Kindle page turns. So I'm in the Kindle lending library, and I would say probably 70% of my self-publishing sales come from read-through rates. So meaning people have to be reading the books to be for you to get paid. So it's really important. Obviously, I mean, I know this sounds kind of obvious, but creating a really readable book that people don't get tired of. There isn't a part where they just kind of slow down and think, oh, I'm finished with that one, I'll just pick up another one. It's really important. And there are some techniques that you can do, writing techniques rather than plot techniques, that helps people sort of keep turning pages.
Yeah. Could you have any examples of those sort of things?
I do in the course.
Okay. We'll keep it close. But we can find more information about the course there's a link to it in the show notes for this, but where's the best place to get the information for that?
So the course is it's with Self Publishing Forum, which is sort of in transit at the moment, but I'm sure as of this recording and within a few months of this recording, it will still be there. So if you look for Suzy K Quinn, How to Write a Bestseller, you'll find it on the Self Publishing for SPF University. So basically it's a self-publishing university full of really useful courses, and it's got Mark Dawson's advertising course on there, which is where I first found it. He does a Facebook advertising course, which is great. He does stuff on Amazon ads as well. And then there's loads of other stuff. There's like things about TikTok, and not from me, from other people who've had great results on TikTok, or, I'm trying to think of the other. And I think there's a cover designer lecture on there as well. And it's a great collection of resources for self-published authors. It's brilliant.
Yeah, no, it is really good. I've used the Facebook marketing course on there, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, it's good, isn't it?
Really good, yeah, especially the advertising, because Facebook advertising it's quite a scary platform to use, I think, like especially compared to Amazon, which is relatively straightforward, and even that I think is quite complicated. The Facebook advertising platform, I think, is a nightmare. So that course really step by step through. So
yeah.
Just before, you mentioned about talking to James and him being a friend, and I'm guessing you've met through like different networking events before. So have you found networking to be an important part of like building your author brand and your author business?
Not at all.
Okay.
I haven't done it at all. That doesn't mean that people don't get a benefit from it. But I do. I mean, I absolutely love meeting other authors. And I just find authors such fun people to be around. They're always so intelligent and interesting. And, I really love it. And I love self-published authors. And for me personally, because I'm sort of somewhere in the middle, I'm not quite a traditional self-published author. I write in one genre and then write 20 books or 50 books or whatever. And I'm not, and with publishing, I suppose I haven't stuck to one type in publishing. I'd say it's kind of less benefit for me. Does that answer the question? I'm not sure it has, but I never really thought about having networking, which is a horrible term, isn't it? But, I never really thought about kind of asking people to help me to do it. I just felt like it was my thing to do, and I hate asking for help.
Yeah.
So I kind of
I guess
that's not something I've used.
I get more different people get different things out of networking. I think like some people do it, as you mentioned, like just to meet friends and to make acquaintances in their industry. Especially if you're doing something a bit weird, like being an author. Like maybe your normal friends might have normal jobs, and it's hard to speak to them, and they might not understand what you're up to. Like when I speak to my friends about starting a podcast, they're usually a bit confused about why they're going to their office job. So it's hard to network to, find an affinity with your friends sometimes when talking about your work. But I think I quite like things like the self-publishing show, for example. Stuff like that is great because the learnings from them are really good, especially if you can hear people talking about, like this week I spoke to Isabel Knight about public relations for book writers. I mean, that's awesome. Like who'd have thought about even doing that if you hadn't been to a talk like that?
Yeah.
So I love that side of it. And again, meeting other people is really good too.
Yeah, for sure.
So with your books, your projects that you're working on at the moment, are you working on your current series, or have you got new things that you have got coming out?
Well, at the moment, this year, I'm actually setting up, there's a ghostwriting company in the US, so called Kevin Anderson Associates, and I'm setting up their London office. So I've kind of taken a bit of a break from book writing this year, but I guess at some point, I don't know. I mean, I have ideas all the time for things, so I'm always making notes somewhere, or I've got like a big ideas folder. I'm sure you do as well. That you're kind of adding notes to. So I've got a few ideas sort of going around, but I think nothing has quite sort of landed as yet.
Yeah, I'm chatting to Kevin Anderson next week.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yep.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
really excited about that because I had to do some convincing to get him to speak to him, but I'm really excited.
Oh, okay. Oh, you could have asked me. I would have. Well, maybe you've done a better job asking direct. I don't know.
So what's this project then? You're setting up ghostwriting. Is that for fiction writers or for?
Setting up Kevin's UK office. So I'm
Yep.
setting up the London office for his ghostwriting editorial company. And so we offer basically it's editorial services. And we have a sort of connection to self-published authors as well, because we offer what you don't get as a self-published author, which is editorial support from a publishing company.
Right.
So
Okay.
we hire the model is we basically hire publishing editors from the industry who've got really good track records. So New York Times #1s. We've got fantasy authors who've worked with really big names who've had like New York Times #1s. And then we use them to help authors edit books. So I'm basically finishing setting up the London office. And yeah, and then Kevin's obviously he's the guy that set up the whole thing and it's his model. So he'll be a really interesting person to talk to.
Yeah,
Yeah, tell him I said hello.
I will do.
Well done for, yeah, he should remember me, I hope.
Well, if he's paying you to set up his London office, you'd hope he'd remember you, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, he will.
Yeah.
I hope.
So with that ghostwriting, is that mostly for people who have got like the structure of an idea but need just help with it, or like how are those? Like, what are the services there? Is it like especially fiction writers?
So for authors, authors don't need the ghostwriting. What they want is someone to help creatively, sort of developmentally edit their manuscript so it's the best it can be. So it's a really professional, successful second pair of eyes who can look over the manuscript and help them get it in shape for the market, readers, and then that kind of thing. Ghostwriting is generally for people who obviously haven't written, and we would create the manuscript for them, again based on that kind of using publishing kind of insider knowledge to help structure their book and to think about readership and the market and the bookshop and how we're going to attract a publisher. But that's more sort of geared around finding a traditional publisher, really, that service. And in fact, as is the editorial, really, but the ghostwriting is very much geared around that. So
Yeah.
sorry, I kind of feel like I might have sent everyone to sleep with that, but it's
No,
interesting to me because it's a live and fun thing for me.
Yeah, no, this is the stuff people want to hear about, definitely, because it's people want to know about different ways they can like, get their business up and running. Because a lot of people sort of see their self-publishing authorship as a business, not just as just as them being a writer.
It's a really useful service to have. I mean, to me, it's like the missing part of the puzzle for self-published authors, because you can get everything else. You can hire an editor, but you can't hire an editor who's worked in publishing, who's worked with big names, who's worked with like Tana French, or I can't necessarily say all the names at the moment actually because we're looking at hiring someone, but who've worked with sort of big name best-selling mega authors. Yep. You can't hire those people at the moment, but you can now. But also for authors who are looking to get traditionally published, it's also a really good step up towards traditional publishing, because you're working with someone who's worked in the business, so you can ask them during your consultations with them, okay, so what's the best next step, how do I kind of go about putting this forward to publishers? And then of course they're going to give you feedback on the manuscript. So it's a useful service. I think like a lot of people after COVID, or maybe during COVID, I'm not too sure, but sort of I think some sort of creative burnout happened during COVID. I think because we weren't kind of living a life, I don't know what it was, but I felt like there needed to be some kind of exciting I need to do something a bit more exciting. So I feel very blessed to have this project to do. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, good. Nice. That sounds really exciting. Are you going to be doing any like networking shows or like to sort of promote this? I know obviously you do the self-publishing show, but are there any others you're going to go to?
Shows. So
like Automation or anything like that?
So say that again, Teddy. Sorry, I missed that one.
Like any conferences or like Automation or anything like that where you're going to promote?
So we did the London Book Fair last year, and we also did the self-publishing formula, and we did a conference in, I want to say Barcelona, but it wasn't. Where was it? Was it Madrid? It was somewhere in Spain. Seville, that was it. Was it Seville?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it was. Yes, it was. It was 20 books, Seville, and it was great.
Okay.
It was I'm sorry for forgetting the city. It really was a great conference. Yeah, so we're kind of slowly making people aware of us in the UK. I think KEA, which is the name for Kevin Anderson Associates, they're huge in the States. They've got like they've got like 20 people on staff, 20 editors on staff, and then more staff besides. And yeah, they're really huge. So we're hoping to grow something similarly exciting in the UK.
Great. I mean, that sounds really exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it soon. So for people that are just starting out writing, especially if they're self-publishing, so what would the tips you'd have for them on both their writing craft and also thinking about how they would get their sort of their first sales and how they would really grow that book?
Well, I suppose it would be different advice for fiction and non-fiction. So should I start with fiction and give
We'll start
like
with fiction,
kind of?
yeah.
So I think with fiction, a lot of it is kind of, I suppose, fine. It's a very good idea to write the same sort of book or write in the same genre, or at the very least write to the same readership base, because that makes things a lot easier for Amazon. So if you're self-publishing, you want to make sure Amazon is sort of repeatedly kind of moving the same readers to you over and over again. You don't want to confuse it, as I've done many times, with kind of doing different sort of offshoots and different sort of types of books. So I think that's a good tip for fiction writers. For non-fiction, I mean, there's so many exciting ways you can market with non-fiction, isn't there? I mean, I'm sure you're a great person to give advice on this, but I think you can be so creative with a non-fiction book. You can be so creative in making videos on YouTube, sort of how-to videos, and then directing people to the book and stuff like that. And I think it kind of, with fiction, I think is trickier actually to do that, because people would go on YouTube and they might look at how to, whatever your area of expertise is, and then they see you've written a book and they'll go and buy the book. But with fiction, people don't tend to go on YouTube, from what I've seen, to kind of look for, they might look for maybe recommendations, but you can't force someone to recommend your fiction book. So I don't think they're looking for book trailers, or I've never seen those be particularly effective, even though they're quite cool to have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that was useful or not, but
yeah, you're right. With non-fiction, it is a bit easier because some of the books kind of lend themselves to adverts and things like that, and creating like extra PDF downloads or something that you can use as a way to get people to sign up for your mailing list. But with fiction, it can be a bit difficult. I think some of the tips I've heard that people have been quite creative are things like extra stories that you could be added on. You can use them as great ways to get people to join your mailing list, or even like extra parts of information. I know James, I think, uses like flight logs. James Blatch uses flight logs for his like Cold War RF stories. Really interesting way of like trying to get readers. So I guess you can be creative, but getting people onto your mailing list is a great way to build a rapport with your audience, I think.
Yeah, that's true. But it's a bit chicken and egg with that, though, because you kind of it seems someone has to read the book before they then. But I know what you're saying. You're right. I mean, that's a really great thing to do once someone's read the book. But in terms of getting someone to read the book, how do you kind of? It's a bit trickier. But yeah, feel free to fill up the space with anything useful there, because I don't know. I just focus on the books more than on the other side.
I mean, that's probably quite good advice in itself, just focusing on the writing, and then the rest will take care of itself, become a better writer. Yeah, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, though. And I really do believe in, I would never say to someone, don't market, don't bother. I think you've got to take responsibility for it. And when people say to me, I just, people say, I could never self-publish. What that says to me is then, like, you're going to have trouble with publishing as well, because the expectation is, well, publishers may or may not expect it, but you should be responsible for your own career and getting your book in front of people. And that doesn't mean going on Facebook and being a pain and saying, buy my book. Not at all. People hate that. But it does mean uploading your book everywhere you can, making sure it's just visible in all the places it can be visible, having a book launch, having, just doing everything you can that you can think of without being irritating to put your book, at least your book cover, in front of people so it gets seen a lot, is your job. It's your responsibility, Yeah,
I was lucky, but I always believe I was lucky with my first self-published books, but I always believed that and my first published book, I really did so much running around. I mean, you could say for all the good it did me, but that was always my attitude of, you don't expect someone to do this for you. You've got to do this yourself.
Yep. Yeah, I think I saw Ricky Gervais said once, he said, you've got to go out and get all your own work and then you give your agent 10%. It's like exactly the same thing, isn't it? You just got to, even though you've got someone representing you, you've still got to go out and take responsibility for that yourself. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about this. Like, my agent hates how interfere I am. Actually, I'm pretty sure he does. Because I'll send him the odd thing about, and he's, I can do this job myself. Thank you. But I know what you're saying. That you have to. For publishers, I think a lot of authors expect publishers to do marketing and that kind of thing. They expect if they're traditionally published, all of that side of things were taken care of, and that's really not the case. It's really not the case. Even with a big major publisher, they will only have a limited kind of marketing reach for you. Yeah. And their expectation probably is you will be going out a lot and doing your own thing as much as possible,
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for chatting to me. I think it's been a great conversation so far. I think everyone's going to learn lots about your books and you, and like some of the techniques you use. And the advice of just get better at writing, I think, is probably quite good for a lot of people. Concentrate on your craft. If people want to get in touch with you, where's the best place for them to contact you or follow you?
So I'm a bit slow on social media, but I am there. So I'm on Instagram. So I'm Suzy K Quinn on Instagram and Twitter. And I am looking at Threads at the moment, as I feel like I should be on it. And I have a Facebook page. And I love people coming and talking to me on social media. So there's also, I'm trying to think. I feel like there's another. Oh, I was on TikTok for a while, but I haven't really done that for ages, like years.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, thank you very much. So just final question just before we go. What's the book that you recommend that you're reading or you've read but you think everyone else should be reading?
Well, it would be wrong to recommend one of my books, wouldn't it? But I am rereading one of my books at the moment. But there's a reason. It's not just like complete arrogance. There's some film people have asked about it. So I'm kind of, I'm looking at like, how would it look as a script? But do I have to pick just one or can I pick more than one?
You can pick more than one if you want.
Okay, so T.M. Logan Lies, which I'm rereading. I read it ages ago, and then I met him at Harrogate, and he signed a copy for me, and so that was great. So I reread it, and it's just such a great example of tension, and just moving the reader through, and you can't stop for a minute. You're so intrigued, and you want to find out what happens. And then also Ruth Ware, It Girl. Again, I got a signed copy from her at one of her book signings, probably over a year ago, when the book was launched. In fact, so it definitely was over a year ago. And so I got a signed hardback, wonderful, and I've had it on my shelf as this little present to read for ages, and I've just got around to reading it, and it's just so good. It's so well researched. It's amazing. I thought she must have gone to Oxford University, but turns out she hasn't. So she's just done this amazing research into being a student at that university, and it's just a great book.
Brilliant. Those are some good recommendations. I haven't heard those ones, so I have to go pick them out.
Yeah.
But thank you, Suzy K Quinn. It's been great chatting to you. We'll speak again soon.
Very welcome. Thanks ever so much.